Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning, and I want to thank everybody who's in attendance. And also, I believe that this is a landmark day in the state of North Carolina where there is a clarion call for all parties in the state to work together on behalf of our children. North Carolina's ability to compete for jobs, develop a stronger economy, and promote greater economic prosperity for all of its citizens is dependent upon a quality education system, public education system in this state. As superintendents of North Carolina, we believe it's imperative that North Carolina develops and commits to a shared vision for public education, that we join hearts, that we join hands, that we join together, working together as a community for our children. We believe that this vision includes outlining the knowledge and skills that students must know to be able to demonstrate upon graduation in order to be successful learners, employees, and citizens in the 21st century. It also includes the instructional delivery and learning support systems, the human capital, and the funding needed to provide our students with a world-class education. We believe that this is absolutely achievable by working together. As Jack mentioned, we have been working on this as a team across the state, developing a vision and developing a guide. We call this a guide. We have 6 specific goals. Dr. Tony Jackson will come up and will share the first 3 goals, and then followed by Dr. Frank Till. So at this time, I'd like to ask Dr. Tony Jackson if he'd please come forward and share the first 3 goals.
Good morning. I'm pleased to be here with my colleagues this morning to share with you the goals that we have collectively reached as a group to provide guidance for strengthening public education in the state of North Carolina. This guide includes, as Dr. Edwards indicated, 6 key student-centered goals for strengthening public education in North Carolina, as well as specific steps that we, as superintendents, are urging lawmakers and other state leaders to take to accomplish each. Goal 1, all North Carolina students will graduate prepared for college, careers, and citizenship. As superintendents, we recognize clearly that we are preparing students for a world that we cannot describe and for jobs that have not been created. Therefore, it is essential that we prepare every student for this realization, and that at the end of their journeys in the public school system in North Carolina, we assure them that they are equipped to take advantage of multiple options. Our second goal, assessment. School districts will use multiple balanced and appropriate assessments to measure student growth and achievement. As a result, we would ask that those who are making decisions consider the following. Are we measuring the right things? And is that measurement meaningful? And can we come up with a better way to evaluate and assess the quality of schools and the progress of students? And most importantly, is the new A through F grading system a true reflection of our school's actual performance and value to our communities? Goal 3, instructional delivery. We know that our students will not be successful without excellent teachers standing in front of them and without the appropriate content to ensure that they master content and curriculum on a regular basis. And so we would ask that that we look at those key strategies that we have outlined, specifically ensuring that students have access to rich content and instructional resources in their classrooms, and that we've established a very stable timeline for statewide review and revision of curriculum so that our teachers are very clear about what should happen in classrooms, and everyone is on the same page about the expected outcomes. And with that, I will ask my colleague, Dr. Frank Till, to come forward and outline the final three.
Thank you, Tony. As superintendents, we realize as we are the CEOs of our school system and that we need to step together and identify a shared path of progress for public schools. As in Alice in Wonderland, when Alice said to the Cheshire Cat, "Give me directions," the Cheshire Cat said, "Where do you want to go?" And Alice said she didn't have a clue. So the Cheshire Cat said, "Any path will do." Today, we're going to try to define a path for you as we go forward, and I have the final three goals. Goal 4, North Carolina will embrace digital learning to transform our public schools and communities. We all recognize the learning of the past has gone as it is to the past, and we're calling on a key strategy to include digital learning as a core component of all educational plans for innovation and personalization. We understand to do that in the state that there must be infrastructure to bring that about, which is the internet, Wi-Fi, and things such as that. We also realize that over the next couple of years, we've got to find devices so that, in fact, it's accessible for every student. Goal 5, develop North Carolina's human capital for the provisions of high-quality public education. We understand that our people are critical to the relationships with our children. In fact, each day, our children in North Carolina come to school more and more from dysfunctional families, and it's the people in the school that, in fact, give them that balance. So therefore, North Carolina must be competitive from a salary point of view to attract the best and the brightest. And so we call for over the next couple of years that as a state, we move our teacher salary schedules to be among the top 10% in the country. We also want to encourage incentives so that, in fact, as in foreign countries where teachers are held in higher regard, that we, for our young people, put incentives together so that, in fact, we honor our teaching profession so that young people want to go into it. And then, of course, we want to hold everybody accountable with a fair evaluation system so that, in fact, we reward those who perform and have the ability to get rid of those who don't. The last goal is that North Carolina will rank number 25 nationwide in the public school funding by the year 2025, which is 10 years from now. We currently are number 48. We believe that this is an achievable goal, and we understand through constraints that it can't be done overnight, and we believe a 10-year goal is for that. And we would ask that we look at the restoration of some funding, particularly for those students who have achievement gaps and for those students who are preparing for college. Even though we're the K-12 systems, we ask that we look more and more at broadening the equal and the eligibility requirement for students, our preschool students, so that particularly for our poor kids, that they don't come with such a deficiency. We're also saying that we are willing to be held accountable, but at the same time, we would like flexibility among our resources so that we, in fact, can meet that accountability, and would ask, in fact, that any flexibility given to a charter school would be given to us, and any lack of flexibility for us would also be a lack of flexibility for them. And finally, an infrastructure point, we would like very much to find some way to build new schools, refurbish schools, because as our schools get older, it becomes more and more difficult to deliver the 21st century curricula. And finally, it's important that we as superintendents are here today as a step and a path forward for public schools, because next Tuesday is our public school system of North Carolina's birthday. We will be a grand 175 years old next Tuesday, and we will be celebrating from that point on from a perspective of celebrating the strength of public schools as demonstrated by these superintendents standing before you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Till and Dr. Jackson. I want to thank Tony and Frank for their leadership on this endeavor, and also Jack Hoke. This is an historic gathering. This is the first time that we're aware of that all the superintendents in the state have joined together to create and align a shared blueprint, a shared vision. We have over half the superintendents in the state gathered here today from Manio to Murphy in a collective will. And I really believe it's imperative on all of us, all superintendents and others, to work together to build and craft opportunities for our children. We invite policymakers, elected officials, business and industry leaders, educators, parents, students, and all stakeholders to join this conversation and embrace a shared vision and a strategic direction for public education, and provide the economic investment and funding to continue our forward momentum to improve our public schools and achieve success for all students. We truly believe that when we work together, everyone wins. And I believe that this is an opportunity for us to join together, make a difference for all of our children today, tomorrow, and into the future. At this time, we'd like to open up for questions from members of the media that are here today. Any superintendent, this is one of the things we'd like to share, every superintendent here has their thumbprint on this guide. We all worked on this together. Every single superintendent in the state worked on this. So every superintendent here today is well prepared to answer questions, and this time we'd be glad to entertain any questions. Yes, sir. Well, no, sir. We are, again, this is a shared vision, and charter schools are part of the public school equation in North Carolina, and I think that we have learned from experience working together. We do think it makes sense for public school systems to have some of the same flexibility. I think this is something that, as we are working together with members of the General Assembly, it makes sense. We can learn from each other. Yes, we can learn from charter schools, and charter schools can learn from us, but we think it makes sense to share in terms of the same expectations and some of the same requirements. Well, there are a variety of differences in terms of programming, focus, but again, we believe that flexibility makes sense. Charter schools are playing a vital role in North Carolina today, and we believe will into the future. There are proposals for charters to be born out of local school systems, but I think, again, a key is looking at it holistically, and I think looking at if it makes sense for charter schools, if this makes sense and that flexibility provides value. Part of the onus from the big origin of charter schools was so that we could learn from that experience, whether it's innovation, practical implementation. So this makes sense for us to learn from that experience if it's worked well, and as we learn from each other. Other questions? Yes. Well, I think that when we look at the testing landscape in North Carolina, it's evolved over time, and I think that it's a good point now to take a look at what's working and what could be improved. We have a massive testing program, and I believe that in general the disposition would be that less is more, that we can obtain the desired accountability, desired information, but align it more specifically. And we do believe that there is a very real test overload when we look at the amount of testing that we do. So we think this is something, again, we are saying that we want to work with elected leaders and policymakers and sort out what's working and what's not. And we think that we're at a point, at a juncture in time where this makes a lot of sense. Yes, ma'am. Well, we've had ongoing conversations with our elected leaders from districts all over the state, engaging in conversations both about funding, about policy, about practices. And I do believe that clearly this is a call to see public education as an investment. When there's an investment in that opportunity, it creates a savings. It creates an opportunity that makes a lot of sense. This is an investment in the future of North Carolina, and we really believe that our elected leaders know that, understand it, embrace it. And again, part of the call today is let's work on this together. Let's work through the detail, and obviously we have to look at the practicality of the revenue, the resource that's available, and we understand that, work with our elected leaders, but align that and align both an immediate and long-term investment in public education. It makes sense from an economic development standpoint. It makes sense from a citizen prosperity sense, and it makes sense in terms of a longitudinal statement about North Carolina, who we are and what we're about. So this is, again, I think, yes, there are funding implications, but ultimately we know that we have to work within the revenue base that we have. We have to be realistic, but we believe we can do that. And we're sharing a sense of optimism that our elected leaders are committed to public education, do believe in public education, and we can work together and find a balance between the revenue and the opportunity. Other questions? Yes, sir. Well, we don't have that detail fleshed out, but we do know that we have infrastructure needs that are significant. And just like any state, any community, that we need to build on that and look at that. Obviously, this is a call for dialogue and to look at both the current expense as part of the plan, but also the long-term plan of infrastructure. We know, again, this is, again, an investment that will bring a return for many, many years to come. I know locally in Mooresville, we passed a bond referendum this past November with both Iredell County Schools and the Mooresville Grade Schools and Mitchell Community College. And I think that when we look at the infrastructure needs, they're significant. We know that it's well documented. So I think part of that conversation, and obviously our elected leaders, both in the General Assembly, the governor, local leaders, all will weigh in on this, but we believe that there is a very critical need here, and we need to plan for it. And we don't want to wait and plan when we're in a position of despair, but where we really have the opportunity to move forward. And we have school needs all over the state related to trying to figure out a way to address the capital needs. That, yes, there are states, there are examples of this over the state. I know a good example, and we yes. Other questions? Yes. Did anybody hear that question? No, I'm kidding. Well, I think, again, this is, we have been sorting through the evolution of standards. And I think it's real important that we work on this together and come up with a common goals, common vision around the curriculum standards. Obviously, the State Board of Education, along with a committee appointed through the General Assembly, has been working on this. We want to continue that work to define the standards and to make sure, and again, this is part of this plan, to make sure that we have a curriculum that matches up with the expectations and the needs of our students, that we engage with our community. We have been doing this, we've been working on it. I know that there is a shared vision of accountability from our elected leaders, superintendents, teachers, principals, and parents. There's a belief that if we have our curriculum standards aligned to the future of our students' needs, it will make sense. So we have work to do there. And I think that we have prospered in the work over the years related, whether it's the Common Core or North Carolina Core, new standards, but this is something that, again, this is a call, let's work on this together. We're not saying today that we have the answers. This is a call, let's work on this together. And a very strong suggestion that when we work on standards, when we work on our curriculum, budget, when we work together, we will all benefit, and it just makes sense. And we believe that we have leaders in this state who want to create this shared vision, and we can work together on it. Other questions? Yes. Well, that's a good question. And I think, part of the challenge is try to suggest goals that are achievable, goals that are reasonable with the revenue projections that we have long term. And we believe that that is an admirable goal. We believe it's a reachable goal. And again, we have to balance it. There are a lot of needs and a lot of challenges for the state of North Carolina, but a robust, strong public education system will create opportunities for economic prosperity, will create enhanced revenues, and will lead to the resource flow to move up. And we think that, we're bullish on North Carolina. Every single superintendent here, we believe in North Carolina. We believe in North Carolina children. We believe in North Carolina communities, and when we believe and work together, great things can happen. So our intent is working on this together. We do I think that setting high goals and aspirations, but we also want to balance it with the realities that we're living in today. Other questions? I want to also share that all of the superintendents, as we break up, will be available again to answer questions. And we sincerely want to thank you for being with us today. We look forward to working with our elected leaders, policymakers, local leaders, and all other education enterprises in the state. There are a lot of organizations that are working together, but as superintendents, we stand ready to work collaboratively with these objectives and to work with all organizations and ultimately to work together for the betterment of all of our children. Thank you very much. It has been a pleasure to be with you today.